maintaining an authoritarian grip on power.
Wow.
The article talks about the 2021 elections,
Okay.
where Museveni was declared the winner again, amidst accusations of voter suppression, harassment of opposition, and restrictions on media.
It's a clear example of how democratic institutions can be used to serve those in power
Yeah,
and not the actual people.
right.
So the article paints this pretty bleak picture
It does.
of the state of democracy in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't just end there, right?
No, it actually offers some potential solutions,
Oh, good.
or at least some things to think about.
Okay.
It acknowledges that there's no easy fix,
Right.
no magic solution that's going to transform these countries into these thriving democracies.
Yeah.
But it does point out some key areas where progress is possible.
Okay, so what are some of those solutions?
Well, one of the most important is strengthening the institutions.
Okay.
This means making sure the judiciary is independent,
Right.
that legislatures are truly representative and they can hold the executive branch accountable,
Yeah.
and finding ways to fight corruption.
That sounds good in theory,
Yeah,
but I imagine that's really hard to do,
it is.
especially with all the different interests and power dynamics.
Right.
How do you get those who benefit from the way things are to give up their power?
It's a huge challenge for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
It's going to take sustained effort and commitment from everyone involved.
And it's not just about institutions either, is it?
No, the article also emphasizes civic education.
Right, because you need informed citizens
Absolutely.
who understand their rights and what they're responsible for.
Exactly. People need to know how the system works,
Uh-huh.
how to hold their leaders accountable, and how to have these meaningful political conversations.
But even with all that education, there's still this issue of trust,
Right.
or the lack of it.
Uh-huh.
When people see that the system is rigged over and over,
Yeah.
why should they believe that anything's going to change?
It's a good point, and that's why building that trust is so crucial.
Yeah.
It needs transparency, accountability, and a real commitment to change from those in charge.
Okay.
It also means creating spaces where people can voice their concerns and have dialogues and feel heard.
So it's not just top-down reforms.
No.
It's also about empowering people from the ground up.
Exactly.
And that's where the idea of open dialogue comes in
Yeah,
between
sure.
governments and civil society.
Yeah, because if you want lasting change, it can't be forced from above.
Right.
It has to come from a desire for reform
Yeah.
and a willingness to work together across different parts of society.
The article also mentions the potential of technology to help
Yes.
make elections better,
Mm-hmm.
more transparent, and less open to manipulation.
Right, things like electronic voting systems, biometric registration, and real-time election monitoring.
I see.
They can all play a role in reducing fraud and increasing people's confidence in the results.
But technology is just a tool, right?
Of course.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
That's true.
We've seen how authoritarian regimes use technology to watch people
Yeah.
and silence those who disagree with them.
That's why it's crucial to make sure that any technology is implemented in a way that protects individual rights
Right.
and ensures transparency and accountability.
So it's not just about having the technology.
No.
It's about having those safeguards in place to
Exactly.
make sure it's not being misused.
Right.
It seems like all these solutions are connected in some way.
They are. You can't just focus on one thing.
Yeah.
Strengthening institutions, promoting education,
Right.
fostering dialogue, leveraging technology.
Right.
Those are all important,
Okay.
and they need to be tackled together.
To create a system that actually serves people.
Right.
But even with all that, the article seems to say that the democracy, at least the way it is now,
Mm-hmm.
might not be the best option for all African nations.
It definitely raises that question.
Wow.
It makes us think beyond the simple idea of democracy versus authoritarianism
Yeah.
and consider if there might be other models that are actually better suited
Right.
to the different histories and cultures of these countries.
So if not democracy, then what?
It's a big question,
It is.
and it's one we'll keep exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problems democracy faces in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and we've even touched on some things that could help.
Yeah.
But this article leaves us with a really interesting question.
Uh-huh.
If not pure democracy, then what
Right.
what kind of government could actually work better in these places?
It really makes you think outside the box
It does.
because we're so used to thinking of democracy as like the best way to govern.
Yeah.
But what if, in some cases, other ways might actually be better?
Right, like better at creating stability and development.
Exactly, and maybe even more freedom for people.
It's like we have to unlearn this idea that there's only one right answer,
Yeah.
one model that works for everyone.
Uh-huh.
We need to start thinking more about what actually works in each specific country.
Right, and the article mentions a few alternative models
Okay.
that have been suggested or even tried out in different parts of Africa.
What?
Well, some people think we should have a more decentralized system
Right.
where local communities have more power.
So instead of everything being controlled by the central government,
Exactly.
you'd have more autonomy at the local level.
Right, but of course that could lead to problems too.
Yeah, like what?
Well, it could create fragmentation
Right?
and even conflict between different regions.
I see.
But those who support decentralization argue that it can actually help reduce conflict.
How so?
Well, because it gives people a sense of ownership over their own lives.
Okay.
They can find solutions that fit their own specific needs.
Instead of having things dictated to them from far away. So it's all about balance.
Yeah.
Finding that sweet spot between local control and national unity.
Right, and recognizing that different communities might have different things that are important to them.
That makes sense. And there's also this idea of incorporating parts of traditional African systems of government,
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
which I guess tend to emphasize things like consensus
Yeah,
and community involvement.
a respect for elders.
Could those really work in today's world?
It's worth thinking about.
Yeah.
Because these systems are deeply rooted in the culture and values of these communities.
Right.
They might have something to teach us about creating governments that are more inclusive.
I see. So it's not just about copying Western-style democracy.
No.
It's about looking for ways to combine those principles with what's already there.
Right.
Finding a system that feels authentic and genuine to the people.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Because any system will only work if people believe in it,
Right.
if they feel like it reflects their own values.
And that it represents them.
Exactly. If they think it's something imposed on them from the outside,
Yeah.
it's not going to work.
So it's not just about the structures and rules.
Yeah,
It's about the culture, the values, how people view power.
absolutely. And that's what makes this whole conversation so interesting and so complicated.
There's no simple answer.
No,
No one solution that fits every situation.
it's about being open to new ideas.
Right.
Learning from what other countries have done.
Yeah.
And being flexible enough to adapt things as we go.
And accepting that finding the right way to govern in Africa or anywhere, really,
Yeah.
is going to be a long process.
It is. It's a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
And it's one that requires us to always be thinking and adapting and questioning our own assumptions.
Well said. I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
Okay.
We've talked about a lot today, from the challenges of democracy in Africa to the possibility of finding different ways to govern. But even more importantly, I think this deep dive has really shown how important it is to think critically about these things
Yes.
and to be open to new ideas and different points of view.
There's no easy fix.
Nope.
But by having these conversations, learning from each other,
Yeah.
and being willing to challenge ourselves.
I think we can create a better world.
Absolutely. A more just and equitable world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
You're welcome.
We hope it's given you some things to think about
Yeah.
and that you'll keep exploring this really important topic